Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
There ain't no derby like an A595 Derby. Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, a podcast focused on the trials and tribulations of Carlisle United Football Club. From Terry Caldwell to Alfred Agar and Gavin Skelton to Jimmy Shankly, we've got it covered. This is episode 10 and we're going to be looking ahead to this weekend's game against Barrow, looking back at the Scunthorpe United defeat, as well as a general news roundup and a look at what ex-Blues have been getting up to. For this episode I'm joined by my regular co-host Dan McLennan. Dan, how's it gone and do you know what connects all those players?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks. I'm going to guess some sort of Barrow connection.
Indeed it is. So they're all players who've played for both Carlisle and for Barrow. Some interesting ones. And obviously Terry Caldwell's a legendary Carlisle United name, having made over 300 appearances for the club. Alfred Agar actually played in the first ever Carlisle United Football League team. Gavin Skelton obviously has been at both clubs and is assistant manager at the club now. And Jimmy Shankly is brother of Bill.
I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure he's Bill's brother.
Well, there's 4 brothers, weren't they? I think, or 5 maybe, I think it was. And they all play professional football in some way, which is quite incredible when you look back at it. Yeah. But yeah, so you're keeping quite well then, Dan?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so well, let's get straight back into it then, Dan. First up, we've got a general news roundup and some of the things that have happened over the last week or so. So we'll start off and we'll just kick off with the big one. It's the financial implications for the Football League. Particularly interesting because John Nixon, Carlisle United part owner, one of our directors, who's been particularly quiet over the last couple of years, hasn't he? He's piped up in the last week with a few stories on the official website talking about the financial implications for not just for Carlisle United but for the EFL generally, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because obviously he gave his view both from a Carlisle United perspective as well as an EFL perspective. So it was actually fair play to him. It was actually, I think it was over 4 parts. If I think it's finished now, you know what the club are like. There might be another bit of peers, but it was quite detailed and it sort of carries on the theme we've had over the summer of lots of info from those at the top tables, you know, so fair play to him for once. Yeah,
you've got to give him credit. It's an interesting few things he said. I've picked out some of the key points I think that we can discuss here. So first of all, one of the key things he said there was that League 2 last season, the decision to end the season was quite a unanimous one, wasn't it? And he was pretty proud of that. And I think we actually did say at the time that League 2 deserved a lot of credit for just saying, you know what, it's just not sensible for us to carry on here. There was a big difference in League 1 and Nixon did actually point out the fact that you had clubs like your Sunderlands and your Portsmouths who are big clubs and there was a lot riding on it for them, so they weren't keen on the season ending, were they?
Yeah, and I remember when this all happened, we commented on, was it Port Vale, who were 8th in League 2.
Port Vale and Bradford were the 2, weren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and Port Vale especially, you know, they were literally a couple of 1-2 points off with a decent fixture list left. And, you know, the Port Vale owner was heartbreaking at making the vote, but said, no, it's the right thing, you know. It's
the thing, it's actually worked into their favour, you could argue, because they haven't had that sort of disappointment of potentially going out in the playoffs or losing that form, and they've basically just picked up that form and carried into this season, haven't they? Really?
Yeah, definitely. I know. We sort of said they're a team that could possibly do something. So
yeah. So obviously there's that. The word that came out of it that was probably a bit frightening was the word Armageddon, wasn't it? He said the Armageddon situation is quite close for the Football League, and the fact that the payments received so far from the Premier League are advances. They're not additional payments, are they? So down the line, that's the bit that's going to cause an issue for us, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what was sort of agreed was the advance payments were to sort of tide clubs over, knowing that come October they would have fans back in and have a revenue stream. Obviously, other things have happened since, as we know and have discussed, with the fans not coming in. It's that's probably the major sort of money stream that's been dented. So
yeah, it's pretty clear from Nixon's words that there is a big issue down the line now for Football League clubs. He mentioned that Prem might give some cash to help, but he doesn't think they're obviously going to give the full 200 million that's needed. But there's no guarantee. Nixon's hoping it'll be a grant rather than a loan, but there's no guarantee of that. And obviously, as anything when the Premier League helps out the EFL, help in inverted commas there, there's going to be conditions on that. And the one that interesting that was in the Times this week I saw was that the talk is they want the EFL to back their push for a particular set of quotas for foreign players post-Brexit. That was one thing that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, but while something like that doesn't maybe affect us as much, it's going to be, the devil's going to be in the detail when it comes to FA Cup replays, League Cup. A lot of people realise that the winners of this season's League Cup don't even qualify for the Europa League next season. They qualify for what's going to be the new Europa Conference League, which is essentially the third tier of European competition. So the big clubs, they're just not going to be interested in it. I know I've said previously we're the only country of the Big Five, as they call it, to still have a League Cup. Yeah. And I can just see the League Cup going the way of the trophy. You know, possible sort of, can we play our under-23s in it, you know?
Or does it get to the point where you just scrap it all together and make a competition just for Football League clubs? Might be the solution.
Again, something that I've championed over the summer previously. You know, I think eventually that's how it could go. But the other one as well, obviously there's no replays in the FA Cup this season. Premier League clubs prefer playing league football on a weekend because they make more money, simple as.
Yeah. And it's not from the British market they're making the money, it's from the foreign market, and particularly kick-off times.
Instead of having FA Cup games on a Saturday and a replay midweek, it would be no surprise if a lot of the rounds of the FA Cup went midweek in time. I could maybe see the third round staying on a Saturday, because that's the traditional big round, But again, I mean, the traditionalist in people would say, oh, no, but done rightly, it could make success.
Competitions evolve, don't they? That's the thing. The FA Cup as it is now is not the same as it was in the 1800s and stuff like that. And I think I agree with you. If you can keep the third round and maybe the fourth round on a Saturday, does it really matter that much that the fifth and the sixth round go midweek when not as many lower league teams are going to be involved anyway? That's the question you maybe asked there.
I think one thing this whole COVID-19 pandemic has done, it's obviously it started getting people asking questions about football, especially the money in the game. And there's a massive chance for the football authorities to get together and slightly reset the game. But whether they take that opportunity when most of them are just, you know, it's all about self-preservation, sadly, with a lot of the big clubs.
True.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out in the next few weeks.
Definitely. Next point I picked out was quite an interesting one, quite slightly more reassuring for Carlisle fans, is that we aren't quite as close to the edge as other clubs are, because we've had a particularly good financial year thanks to the Branthwaite deal and other deals, which I presume are McCarran, Galloway, obviously the Henderson money we're getting, and I think there was a lad who went to Newcastle as well, maybe in the last year or two.
I was having to think about this when I saw this, because it's
and the Hope money as well, obviously.
Yeah, it's a thing that sort of stood out on the page instantly to me, and he's talking about the last financial year, which ended at the end of June, pretty much, where most of those deals, the Branthwaite.
And most of the Branthwaite money we haven't got yet, have we?
I think the Branthwaite will have just made it, and if we have these Leeds promotion clauses, they will have. The Henderson money will be on this season's accounts, so that won't even be done yet.
Well, the Branthwaite appearance money will be this season as well, won't they? Because they didn't happen until June or July, did they? Games? So that'll be them.
I mean, I know the club are always coy to reveal exact figures, and you know the sort of claim that it's because the other clubs don't want to. The information released, but come the early next year when the accounts up to the end of June come out, there's going to be one big line for income received transfer related, and you know we'll sort of be able to take a rough estimate at piecing it together how much it is, but it's obviously quite a strong line in the accounts, isn't it? So,
yeah. But you don't want all that money to disappear just to tide us over this year, really, do you?
No.
But yeah, the other thing, a couple more things. Recent issues at Orient and Walsall show the need for further COVID-19 testing in the EFL, but there is big cost implications for this, isn't there? That's the thing that comes out of that, and there's probably going to be discussions over the next few weeks as to how that worked. There's some interesting talk there about how the testing worked and the fact that they could get free testing some ways, but the EFL wouldn't accept those tests or something. That was,
I also saw there was a snippet on Sky Sports News last night that I think in future, in cup ties, Premier League teams have all agreed to pay for testing of any EFL opponents. So, say we get to the third round of the FA Cup and draw Liverpool would pay for our testing.
Yeah, but didn't Hull refuse to take the test that West Ham offered to pay for?
Yeah,
so Orient did the right thing, and then they ended up getting kicked out of the competition.
Yeah, I wondered if they'll maybe sort of pass some sort of rule where you've got to or you can't play, you know.
Yeah. But obviously there's risk there that, you know, once a certain number of games start getting postponed, you know, how much of a joke does the competition become for the EFL? That's where there's another problem.
Yeah, definitely.
And the final point was there was a brief bit about the Edmund Woolermill succession stuff. He was very coy on this, wasn't he? He didn't really give anything away, but the way he was talking was if there are future plans for this to happen at some point. It wasn't very clear, was it? It was sort of fudged almost.
Yeah, but I think that's probably slightly longer game at the moment. I mean, I know Philip Dane, EWM, have been in the news recently. He's possibly looking at selling part or all of it, but I think that's slightly longer game stuff, but we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, so that's covered the financial implication stuff. Let's move on to a few little bits of other news. There's no transfer news at the moment. It's gone very quiet. We've still got another couple of weeks before the transfer window shuts, haven't we? So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. The first bit of news, a bit of sad news really. It was after we recorded last week, wasn't it? Actually, this came out, is the passing of Pete Hampton. Great club servant, wasn't he, Dan? He was at the club for many years. He was born in Oldham, but started out playing at Leeds United. Actually, he was on the bench in a European Cup final, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Then he spells at probably his most successful spell was at Stoke, but he also was at Burnley. He was played in that Burnley side that avoided relegation to the conference, didn't he? In the 80s, I think it was. Then he was at Rochdale, and then ended his playing career at United. Then took over as physio. He was actually the one who gave Dolly his first job, didn't he, as his assistant? And obviously Dolly took over and became our long-term physio until this summer. He also had a spell managing Workington during the incredible 1998-99 season.
Yeah, he was quite a successful manager for Workington, wasn't he?
I think they won something like their last 12 games in a row. And that was the only way they could have won the league and gone up.
Yeah.
And obviously Paul Stewart was playing for them back then, Grant Holt, and a few ex-Carlisle players like George Dixon. I remember him being in nets for them, big lad he was. So he left Workington in 2001, and then he started working in physiotherapy at Cumberland Infirmary, and he still did help out at Carlisle on occasions, I think with the youth team particularly.
Yeah, I think he did a bit with the academy and the youth team.
Yeah.
But no, definitely sad news, and I'm sure the club will remember him in their own way.
Yeah, it's one of these
when they're able to.
Yeah, it's like the John Courtney thing, wasn't it? The club did say that there'll be a minute silence, I think, once fans are allowed back at games, rather than having to wait, whatever. So yeah, hopefully we'll get the chance to show our respects at a game sooner rather than later. The other few bits, interesting one come out from Chris Beach this morning in the interviews ahead of the Barrow game, is Jack Armour's had a growth spurt. He grew a couple of inches, and he was a big lad as it was, wasn't he? He was quite a tall lad.
I mean, he's a left back, but he's a very tall left back.
He is very tall.
I think he's going to move into centre back in time, because the modern game, you don't get really, really tall fullbacks, do you?
Oh, they'll get moved into midfield eventually.
Possibly.
Based on what Beach likes to do. But,
well, yeah.
But yeah, and obviously, quickly touch on these two. Facing the crowd tomorrow, so that's something that the kiosk guys have been putting together. So it's one of these things where you get cut out of you in the crowd. I'm sure they will be sifting them to pick out the rum characters that people try to get through in that. I'm not sure who we'll be trying to get ourselves in there, Dan, but Interesting one. And obviously, just a quick run for you here, Dan. An update on CUSG memorabilia search. There's been a few more additions to that, hasn't there?
Yeah, I've had a couple more drop-offs and pick-ups. I'm actually meeting a fella in a car park who to get a load of older stuff, and I've been sort of sorting through, ready for dropping down to the club when it's safe to do so, and we're really getting a good back collection of programmes for the club. We've also got a lot of videos, old United videos. Just give a quick shout to Jeff Jackson, who many people know as the Carlisle programme man. He's been converting a lot of these to DVD in the last couple of weeks, and we'll be able to give the club sort of a good wedge of DVDs that they can use for the social medias and the likes.
Be fantastic once that's all
just going back to that, if anyone does have any, just get in touch via our Twitter or the message board and give me a shout, and I'll be in touch with them.
Excellent. Okay, Dan, so that's the news roundup done. Let's move on to reviewing the Scunthorpe United game. So, it's one of those games, isn't it? 1-0 defeat sounds quite narrow. We've probably had the better of the play, but it's just a poor result and a bit more incisive than the Cambridge game, away game, but still not particularly great, was it?
Scunthorpe probably did to us what we did to them at Glanford Park last season.
Yeah, definitely.
Basically.
Two poor teams, one team slightly better, but not coming out on top. That's way to look at it. Picked out a few talking points in this game. I feel bad bringing up his name again, but it's got to start with the John Mellish question again, isn't it? Because he's the one who's given the ball away in the lead up to the goal. And yes, there is a bit more to happen from that point going forward, but because we're on the ascendancy and he gives the ball away in a key position, players are then out of position, get caught out. McDonald looks like he's out of position and it almost looks like he's at fault, but actually the position he's taken is probably the right one for the fact that we're on the front foot.
I mean, it was a poor pass, wasn't it? And Scunthorpe have turned the ball over very, very quickly and got up the pitch and took the chance. And it's just a shame that it happened to be Mellish who gave it away. If it had been Guy or Furman, I don't think there'd be as much sort of talk of it. But no, it was like we were saying. Is it maybe getting a little bit unfair on him?
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I mean, I was actually on BBC Radio Cumbrian after the game. I was on the fans panel, and I did say this, I think, from what I remember what I said. I think I said it's not really fair on the lad, and you have to ask the question, should he maybe be taken out and we start using him a bit more sparingly in that role to start and just ease him into it rather than... I mean, Beach seems determined to just keep him in there and sort of push on through and go through these bad games and get him up to speed. But
I think the problem also is, who do we play there?
It's true. I mean, Danny Devine came on, and I actually think he did okay. I mean, it's only a short spell he was on in that game, but he looked a bit more in control than Mellish did.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see Josh Nixon have a game there. Obviously, I know he's getting close. I know he's been training with the youth team properly this week, and he'll be back with the first team next week by all accounts. But it's a lot to ask for someone like Dixon to come straight back and straight in, isn't it? So,
yeah, it'll probably take a while for him to bed back into the first team action, I would imagine.
I'll also add that we will try and get through this episode without mentioning a name who plays that position. don't, because the temptation's there, but we're not going to mention it. There still is an issue there, but let's just leave that for the episode. Let's hope that we get through the Barrow game and things are better and we can talk more positively. Because if it's the same again after the Barrow game, we will be discussing that next week. I can guarantee you that 100%. But yeah, I sort of agree. I think maybe we need to be bedding him in a little bit more rather than starting him in these games, Mellish. But we are low in numbers in that area, I suppose, so maybe there's no choice really but to play him there. And to be fair, we have to point out that neither Guy or Furman had particularly great games last week, so it's not Mellish alone that's been poor in that midfield. I think Guy probably had arguably as poor a game as Mellish, but you don't notice it because he didn't make the mistake for the goal. Mellish has took the headlines because his pass led to the goal, didn't it?
Yeah. Two more things I want to mention here. Gavin Riley came on as a sub, playing alongside Coyote, but we just lumped the ball up to him. And I've said this before, but I've got a real concern that we've signed a player here because we can, and we're not going to play to his strengths or use him. And lumping a long ball up to Gavin Riley is not going to do us any good. You want to get the ball on the floor and play him in behind and get him a chance to run onto the ball, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, when we signed Gavin Riley, a lot of fans watched his sort of show reel of goals, and they're nearly all getting played into him. You know, if you wanted to knock a ball long in the last 10 minutes, he's not the striker to play. If you want to start him and try and play him in behind the lines, brilliant.
Two more things, actually. I haven't put one of these down on the running order for you, Danny, to let people in a bit of insight. First up, the one that is on the running order, Ethan Walker. Quite an impressive debut. Looks a decent signing then, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's quite a big lad for his age. You know,
Stocky, isn't he?
He's essentially a first-year professional, and he's quite bulky when you maybe compare him to some of our lads. Yeah. And I think he'll be disappointed at not getting one of his shots away for a goal.
It was a hell of a save, that first one, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, to be fair. But, you know, he was probably one of the few bright sparks from the Scunthorpe game.
It's interesting, James Phillips said it reminded him a little bit of Matty Robson, the way he's sort of the stocky, pacey winger. I'd probably agree with that. Maybe Robson obviously was a bit more settled as a professional when he arrived at us. But yeah, no, decent. The other thing I want to bring up, and I've mentioned this after the game, a little bit of a concern for me. We're 3 games into the season, and late on in a game, when we're chasing a game, I mean, he had Lewis Bell on the bench, young lad, tricky winger, could have created something for us. Beach's substitution was to take Tanner off and bring on Hunt, move Hayden to right back and Hunt to centre back, seemingly to have a bit of extra height for set pieces. That worries me that early on in the season, that's our main tactic, to try and get back into a game. I don't know about you there, Dan, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it wasn't, I know it wasn't the greatest of substitutions. I'd rather just, if you're going to do that, just stick the lad up front and boot it long to him, you know.
Yeah, it's a strange one. And interestingly on Tanner, looked quite impressive at the start of pre-season. He's not really hit the ground running yet in the league, has he? It's maybe he's a little bit nervous. In pre-season, he was taking on players and he was causing problems, but he seems a bit more cautious in the league games and he's playing the ball back a lot. Is that a tactic? I don't know, but...
Yeah, I mean, it could be what he's getting asked to do, you know. I know there's obviously pre-season games, there's a bit more fluidity, you know, you've got a bit more licence to get about. But no, like the Southend game, I thought he came into it really well in the second half, but... You know, it's still early days for some of these lads. So
we do have to give them time. I'll be fair on that, but obviously need to start picking up results quickly because it's going to be a tough season, I think, this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. I think that rounds up the Scunthorpe game. Don't really want to talk much more about it because it wasn't much fun to watch. So let's end part 1 there, Dan, and we'll be back in a minute, and we'll have part 2 where we'll look ahead to this weekend's game against Barrow. Welcome back, everyone. We're into part 2 now, and it's time to look ahead to this weekend's game against Barrow, the first ever Cumbrian Derby between the two sides. Let's give some context there, Dan, because obviously people are like, wait, hang on a second. Haven't Barrow always been in Cumbria? But no, they haven't. They only became part of Cumbria, the town of Barrow, in 1974 during the old Reform Act of all the local councils. Previously, it was part of Lancashire, wasn't it? So when we play, and they obviously were out of the league by the time, in fact, they leave. I can't remember exactly when did they leave the
72 league. They left the league.
So they had left the league by then. Workington had stayed a bit longer than them. I didn't realise that. Previously when we last played them, which was in the 60s, I believe, they were a club from Lancashire, not a club from Cumbria. And you know how long it has been since that game, don't you, Dan?
Yes, because I'm such a sad stato man. By the time Saturday comes, it will be 20,624 days since the last time the two teams played in a full match. Or 56 years, 5 months and 17 days.
So there you go. So if John Coleman or James Phillips are listening to us, there's your fact for you. You can have that for free this weekend. There you go. So yeah, a couple more interesting facts about Barrow for you here, Dan. So the one man I think has managed both clubs, and that's Andy Beattie, who also famously managed Scotland at the 1954 World Cup in Switzerland, which was described, apparently, the organisation headed that by the players as shambolic, which is very typical Scotland, that, isn't it, I suppose? And Barrow have been in existence for 119 years, the football club. How many managers do you think they've had in that time, Dan? You've seen this already, but if you were going to guess.
If you were going to guess, you would probably say 50 or 60, but
77 different managers they've had in that time.
Some amount, isn't it?
Less than 2 years on average per management spell. Which is amazing. You think back in the day, the managers used to last a long time, but at Barrow, seemingly not. But then again, anyone who's ever driven to Barrow before, I suppose people, if they've come from the outside, if they stay there for a year, they've probably had enough of it, haven't they, I guess? But there you go. So it's a big game, looking to bounce back from the Scunthorpe game against the Bluebirds. So let's look ahead, or look at a bit about the visitors now. So Barrow have had a bit of a slow start to life back in League 2. Back in the Football League even, sorry. In the league so far, they've played 3, drew 2 and lost 1. Yet to keep a clean sheet, but they've only conceded 4 and scored in every game so far, despite missing their top scorer from last season, Scott Quigley, until last weekend. So they've not started too badly in the league, have they? They've not set it on fire, but they've not exactly looked terrible, have they?
No, I mean, the 2 home games, Stevenage and Colchester, they've drawn.
Yeah.
They got beat at Newport, which a lot of teams do. It's no disgrace. And I know we don't really like the trophy, but they only got beat 1-0 at Blackpool in the trophy, which was not a bad.
And in the League Cup as well, they drew 0-0 with Derby and only lost on penalties. That's
yeah.
So obviously they've got a new manager this season, David Dunn, a familiar name to football fans, former Blackburn Rovers, Birmingham and England midfielder. I say England midfielder, they played 1 game for England, but replaced Ian Evatt, who went to Bolton. He's not having a great time at Bolton, mind you. Evatt, is he, so far?
No, not yet.
Yeah, his only previous manager experience was at Oldham, and also a brief caretaker spell at Blackpool. Didn't last particularly long at Oldham, but then again, who has lasted
Not many
long
people have in the
Oldham,
last few years, have they?
Yeah, but he seems to be settling in fairly well at Barrow. Probably as good an opportunity as he could have hoped for, really, done. There won't be massive expectations, obviously, with the current situation and then being back in the league. So he's probably got a bit more leeway to build things there, I guess. Their summer signings included a very familiar face to us, obviously, Mike Jones. He's been a key player for them so far by the sound of things. It's just the sort of signing they really needed coming into the league, isn't he?
Yeah, it's proper solid, League 2 experienced head. He'll just sit in the middle of the park, he'll do the job, and he'll do it with no fuss as well, won't he? Which is the Mike Jones we've known over the last few seasons.
You know that tomorrow he's going to put in a 7 out of 10 performance, isn't he, basically?
Probably 8.
Yeah, probably. Well, yeah. At the very least, you'll get a 7 out of 10 from him, you know that.
Yeah.
Few other signings they made. Some of Luke James, ex-Hartlepool. Well, he was big things expected from him at one point, wasn't there?
Yeah,
he never really lived up to it.
It's a strange one, Luke James. It's never really happened for him, has it?
How old is he now? I'm going to double check that now because he was. I remember him making his debut as 17-year-old at.
Luke James is 25-year-old.
Only 25.
He's 26 in November.
God, it just. Bear in mind, he's probably been playing 9 years now in the league, and just never quite kicked on, has he? But no, he's been there before. I think Barrow. I think he had a loan spell there. He
had a loan spell in 2018. I think he scored quite a few goals for them.
Well thought of, yeah. Also, Callum Gribbin, the ex-Man United youngster, there was quite a lot expected of him at Man United a few years ago, wasn't there? But never quite kicked on. Went to Sheffield United, found it tough to get in the team there, and has now come to Barrow and hoped to rebuild his career there.
Yeah, he seemingly had a few sort of problems that I won't go into because I don't fancy being sued. But he's on the comeback trail, and he's one of those. If he takes his chance, he'll have a career in the game.
Yeah, and Josh Lillis as well is the other one that stood out for me as signings. A good experience keeper to back up. I think it's Joel Dixon's their first choice, isn't he? Who's been there a while now. And the other thing that stands out for me is the 2 other ex-Blues in the team other than Mike Jones, Pat Brough and Connor Brown, who had a loan spell, I think, during the Graham Kavanagh season, didn't he? Interesting name there. So let's have a look at the team news for us for the game this weekend. Toure and Patrick obviously missed the Scunthorpe game with Knox. Sounds like Patrick probably won't be involved this weekend from what Beecher said.
Yeah, he's been very coy about what's exactly the problem and sort of time scales. If you compare it to, say, Brennan Dickinson, straight away he said, it's got to be longer term, and then December was mentioned. So. Yeah. I think they're hoping that it's not as bad as it appears, similar to Magnus Norman.
Yeah. Well, obviously Max Norman not quite fit enough, I think, to be involved yet with the team, but you'd imagine he might actually find it difficult to get in even into the squad, because if Dewhurst's on loan, I imagine Sheffield United would be probably happy to have him on the bench at least. Less clear on whether Toure will be involved. He just wasn't mentioned in the pre-match thing.
My now weekly Asda update. I saw Gimme Toure in the vicinity of Asda a couple of days ago, and he didn't appear to be limping. So hopefully he'll be available for the weekend.
Well, he's become a key player already, hasn't he? You'd hope he'd be involved. Because Alessandro sort of filled in one of the wing roles, didn't he, at the weekend? And did okay, but he just wasn't really involved enough, maybe, to justify starting.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say Alessandro's season hasn't really kick-started yet, has it? He's not really had much chance, and when he has, he's not really done much.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned the fact that Armour's fit again to be involved. Wasn't involved last weekend, I think, probably because of the quotas you have to have with young players on the bench, I think, and things like that. Josh Dixon, you mentioned before, training with the youth squad at the moment, but hope to be back with the first team next week. So that's good news. So bar that, there's no other injury updates we've got for this week, is there, by the looks of things? So hopefully a few more start to get back into the team squad next week. Barrow, not been able to find a huge amount of news about them. It's one of these ones we record in advance, so it's difficult really to know until Friday sometimes.
As we were just saying before we started recording, they've actually just signed a player as we record, and it's Jan Zuma from Bolton, who's his brother of Kurt, who's at Chelsea, and could be on the move in the next few days.
Yeah, so Jan Zuma, he will be straight into the squad for tomorrow. Defender, I think he is, I believe. So, be interesting to see whether he actually starts or not. The other key thing for them is the fact that Scott Quigley played for them last weekend and got through that game no problem, and he's going to be the big threat, isn't he, I think, for them. He's very impressive last season, 20 goals in 37 games. His first season he really had, where he really excelled as a player, didn't he? He was in non-league for a while. He was at the New Saints, I think, and he went to Blackpool. Never really hit it off there, but seemed to have found a home at Barrow where he was settled, didn't he?
Yeah, he's. I know in the season preview, I actually highlighted him as one of those who could score quite a few goals, because he also takes penalties for them, and like you say, he sort of potted around. He was at the New Saints for years, and since going to Barrow, he's really took his chance, and he's a big lad as well. He's about 6'3" or 4 inch.
Yeah, he's not small. Well, you say he's a big lad. It's interesting that when I was listening to BBC Radio Cumbrian after the game last week, one of their fans was on their fans panel, and they mentioned that apparently he didn't score a single header last season.
Right.
Incredible when you think of a big lad like that. He obviously takes penalties, but he didn't really score many headers. So interesting, that one. That's the Barrow team news. Let's have your predictions for this weekend, Dan.
Oh, I've got a feeling it'll be a draw.
I think I agree with you there. I'm not convinced that we've got enough to see how to win.
The teams might sort of cancel each other out a little bit.
Okay, so you're going for a low scoring draw, are you?
I'll say 1-1.
Okay, I'm going to go for 2-2. I think there'll be a fair few goals in this. Neither side's been particularly good at keeping clean sheets this season. Barrow have scored in every game. I just fancy a 2-2, and I think goals for us from, let's go Ethan Walker, and I'm going to go for John Mellish again. I just want him to get his goal. Give him a little confidence for his goal.
I didn't say goal scorer, did I? I'm going to say an Aaron header corner. Bang.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so that's the Barrow preview done. Let's do our brief update on ex-UFC players. There's not a huge amount to cover this week. It's been a little bit quieter, but you've got a few transfer bits.
I've got 1 or 2 transfer bits. Scorer of the greatest penalty in a shootout ever away at Liverpool just over 5 years ago. Alexander McQueen has signed for Barnet in the National League. He's been at Dagenham and Redbridge the last 2 seasons, and he's scored quite a few goals. So I think
he's moved to midfield, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was playing right midfield for a bit, or right wing back, and he scored 1 or 2 goals. But
there's a talented lad who'd never really hit his potential.
He's one of those who is the lad was at Tottenham, so he's obviously got something about him, but he just obviously seems happy sort of being on the the non-league circuit in London, and he'll be getting paid a decent wage.
I was going to say, you can make decent money if you're a young lad playing down there in London that way, can't you?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Obviously, depending on whether the National League returns, it's
yeah. I mean, I think they've been eschewing the government will help them. So.
Yeah. Well, interesting. You mentioned the Liverpool game. Just a quick one here, Dan. Before, obviously, we're tight on time here, but I just wanted to cover this one. We didn't really talk about the fact it was 5 years since the Liverpool game the other week. I got memories of that game. I'm interested. I read one. Martin Howarth, who's a good friend of ours, a CUFC memorabilia collector. He was mentioning the fact that he missed the Liverpool game because he went to the QPR game, the previous round, but he missed the Liverpool game because he had to work that evening and he was based down south. And got me thinking, is there any other big CUFC games you've missed and you've really gutted about it?
I'll have to come back to you on that one.
All right, well, we'll maybe talk about that one in the next game. But for me, the one that stands out is, well, there's two. There's the Wembley final the first time round. I missed that. And the Everton Cup game just after the floods a few years ago. I missed that one because I was helping my missus move down south because she was moving for a job at the time.
Yes, I remember that.
I had to miss that one, so I was quite gutted about that. But not so gutted when the score happened and we lost 3-0 quite comfortably, but there you go.
Trying to be clever with a box system of, was it 3-3-3-1?
Yeah, worked against Liverpool, didn't quite work against Everton, I think it's fair to say. But yeah,
Back to transfers.
Go on.
Former Sheffield United loanee to us, Reagan Slaters, just joined Hull on loan for the season. Good move for him. Obviously, he's been at Arcells and Scunthorpe for the last 2 seasons.
He's still only 20 years old. You forget he was only 18 when he joined Hull.
Yeah, I mean, this is another step up for him. You know, Hull should be at the top end of League One.
Well, I saw that, what's his name, Chris Wilder, the Sheffield United manager, did actually pick him up for praise in pre-season, apparently. Apparently he was playing really well. I think he played right wing-back, actually, for them in pre-season.
Right.
And he was very impressed with how he played. So clearly he's one that he sees for the first team in the future. They just want to build him up slowly towards it.
Yeah. And then this looks like a classic example of a talented player going out and getting proper games, you know. Playing 20, 30, 40 games a season for 2 or 3 years will do wonders for him.
Well, he'll have pushing on 80 games under his belt now already.
Yeah.
So, you know, that'll do him a world of good, I suppose. But yeah. And
the next one's one that sort of raised an eyebrow with a few CUFC fans on social media when the half-hour wonder that was Arthur Gnauer signed for Bolton. Yeah. Which raised the odd eyebrow.
Is he just a cheap option to pad out their squad a little bit, I suppose? And by all accounts, he has ability. And he did well at Macclesfield last season, apparently. So.
Yeah, I think he'll be a bench option and squad player mainly. But
bit of pace to throw in at the end of the game.
Yeah, he's one of those. You know, he could end up playing, having a run, and do him the world of good. But
yeah. So there's his transfers out the way. There's one more little bit goal sort of related ones there. We didn't mention it in the preview about the Barrow game, but Mike Jones, what a goal he scored for Barrow last weekend.
He doesn't do tap-ins, does he?
He does not. You think that he scored 3 goals for us. I think he scored 1 in the FA Cup, 1 in the League Cup and 1 in the League. And all 3 of them, the goal in the League Cup against Derby was one from long range that Scott Carson probably should have saved for Derby.
Yeah.
His goal in the league was against Lincoln. That was one again along the floor from about 20 yards, wasn't it? I think?
Yeah.
And then his goal against Dulwich Hamlet in the FA Cup last season was one of the goals of the tournament, wasn't it?
Yeah, by a long way as well. It was a hell of a strike, wasn't it?
Yeah, and obviously the one in for Barrow, he scored 25 yards into the top corner. Keeper had no chance.
I was also looking at, obviously we always look at goal scorers. I think Jones was possibly the only ex-Carlisle player to score a goal last week.
Yeah,
nobody else jumped out when I had a quick look.
Not sure if Joe Garner's kept his scoring streak up or not, but because he was scoring a few recently. But yeah, so that runs up the XCFC stuff, and that pretty much rounds it up for this week. Dan, thanks again for joining me. Always appreciated. We are going to get around to recording that kids special soon, aren't we? Because you've started drafting it, and you're going to send it over to me, and we're going to get something together. We'll try and get that one out. And I have actually finally recorded the second part of the 0506 season special with Mike. We put that one together a couple of days ago, so we'll get that one out to you soon. I'll need to edit the 2 episodes. It might take a little while, but hopefully I'll have that done. Thanks once again for joining me, Dan. If you've got any comments or feedback or there's anything you'd like to suggest we discuss, please send them in via Twitter to @BruntonBugle or by email to bruntonbugle@gmail.com. Remember, you can subscribe to the podcast via all good podcast apps, including Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Please do also give us a review. Really appreciate the excellent feedback we've had so far. I don't think I've got any new countries to add to the list, I'm afraid.
No.
People
And
listening.
is your numbering game going to be on point with this episode?
I believe this is episode 10. I don't
Yeah.
think I've got that wrong. Are you 100% on that one? You want to double check that one?
Pretty sure, yeah.
In fact, you know what? I'm going to go in the analytics now. I'm on there now. Let me have a quick look and see if there are any new countries. Might take a second to load up. Obviously, I can't remember if I mentioned it a few weeks ago, but my mate in Nottingham was annoyed that I didn't mention the fact that he listens to it, so gave him a mention eventually. No, it's all the usual suspects. We've got 12 listens in Vietnam now. And that's fourth on the list. Wow, Vietnam Blues. There you go. And the most recent one's Turkey. I think we mentioned Turkey, didn't we? So there's nothing new to add there.
I do wonder if maybe some of the Mediterranean ones are maybe people on holidays.
I have a feeling they are. I think
lounging by the pool, listening to our dulcet tones.
Indeed. What better way to enjoy the sun?
Have a Cosmopolitan on us.
Yeah. Have a Camper Choo Choo on me.
Yeah.
But there you go. So that's it, Dan. Thanks again for joining me. Hopefully we'll be celebrating 3 points against that lot down the A595 next week, and we'll be back again to look ahead to the next game next weekend. Cheers, Dan, and up the Blues.